Welcome to the IDD System Redesign Coalition webinar, where we will introduce ourselves and talk about our first year of our grant and what we plan on doing. My name is Doug McDonald. I am the project manager for the IDD System Redesign Coalition grant. With us today, presenting about what the coalition will be doing, is Samantha Alloway from the ARC of Illinois, Mike Bibo from the Center of Development and Disabilities Advocacy and Community Supports, Kathy Carmody from the Institute on Public Policy for People with Disabilities, Caitlin Crabb from the University of Illinois Chicago Institute on Disability and Human Development, and Josh Evans from the Illinois Association of Rehab Facilities. A couple of quick things for folks to know. There will be time for questions at the end of the session. So probably it'll be limited time. If any questions don't get answered, then what I will do is take the questions that have been submitted and share them with our panelists so that they can respond, and then we'll get back to you with an answer. The slide deck from this presentation will be emailed to all participants that signed up. When our website is available, which should be in the very near future, there will also be a recording of this webinar available on the website. So what we're going to do is I'm going to briefly provide a history of the coalition, what got us to where we are today. I'm going to cover things very briefly so that the people that are really doing the work and are putting things together will be able to talk in more detail about their projects and what we can look forward to in the coming months. So I will share the PowerPoint. And we'll start out with, how did we get to where we are today? And we started way back in 2023. At IARF work group was put together to look at what might be possible in order to achieve system change. In August of 2023, the work group organized a keynote presentation with the key stakeholders in the IDD system to discuss about possibilities. In addition, we did an attendee survey, which we'll be talking about in a moment, to explore different options of what people's thoughts were with IDD services. We asked two specific questions. One was, if you had a magic wand, what would you change today in the IDD system? And the other one was, what is your vision for the IDD system? So in 2024, we took those survey results and we did a lot of data analysis to try to figure out, what people were saying. We had about 75 responses initially just from those two surveys, from mostly providers and advocates who had been at the IARF conference. We organized those, we looked at the results, and then we presented our preliminary findings at the IARF conference in 2024. Based upon our work and what we put together, we began working on building this coalition that we've got today. And we were fortunate enough to get a grant from the Coleman Foundation to actually move forward with a lot of our plans, which is an amazing thing. And the Coleman Foundation has allowed us so many opportunities by funding our efforts. And so where we're at today is we're rolling out our tasks. We're preparing to do a lot of really, really great work, and that's very exciting. To give folks an idea of where we started out at, the survey results from the conference way back in 2023, asking people what their vision was for an IDD system. And their vision was for there to be a vision for people with IDD so that they could live their own independent lives and drive their decisions and drive their lives the way they wanted to have a role for communities in ensuring empathy, strong supports, and inclusivity, for the financial structures to be streamlined, continuous, and flexible, Looking at services. People said that the vision should include services being flexible, collaborative, and holistic so that we're moving people forward in the right way. And then the vision also included changing the system structure so that there's a single accessible entry point for self-directed decision making throughout the life of a person that's receiving services. In terms of the magic wand question, uh, what people said if they had a magic wand, what would they change today? Part of that was changing rules to make things easier, simplify forms and procedures, changing mindsets so that there's a shift from the caretaker model of supports to a person-centered choice model of support. Having dynamic changes in services, making sure that service delivery grows with the person so that as their needs and their desires change, services change with that so that they are receiving the services that they need and deserve. People said if they had a magic wand, they would enhance the capacity for housing, employment, behavioral health services, and making sure that the financial supports meet those expanded or enhanced capacity needs. And then finally, develop a thriving workforce, improving pay and training for DSPs, evolving DSPs in decision making, and hopefully even making sure that DSPs have an opportunity to serve as case managers. Now, we realized that this was just the beginning and that we had a very small group for the survey. But based upon this and wanting to move forward, we put together the main themes for what our vision for an IDD person-centered system would be. Would be accessible and navigable, flexible and sustainable, offering up an enhanced quality of life, and offering up continuous improvement throughout a person's lifespan. So as this pulled together, we built a coalition, and that coalition includes the Arc of Illinois with Samantha Alloway at the lead, the Center for Developmental Disabilities Advocacy and Community Supports, which is driven by Mike Bibo, the Institute on Public Policy for People with Disabilities, which is led by Kathy Carmody, the University of Illinois Chicago Institute on Human Development, uh, which is being driven by Caitlin Crabb, and then the Illinois Association of Rehabilitation Facilities, which is led by Josh Evans. And our initial blueprint for system redesign, and I say initial because a lot of what we're going to do the first year is gathering information, is talking to the people involved, talking to individuals served, talking to advocates, talking to family members, talking to providers, so that we've got a broader base for where we want to take things. So a lot of what you hear about with the first year is going to be finding out more. This is just our preliminary findings and what's kind of guiding us at this point. And this includes person and family voice and policy and practice, an integrated data infrastructure, regulatory alignment and oversight to make sure that regulations match person-centered approaches, informed choice and navigation, service capacity and expansion, and crisis and clinical capacity. So very, very briefly, that's where we're starting out at. But now we get to hear from our members, from the coalition members, about what we're actually going to be doing. And it's really exciting. I'm really excited to be able to share this with folks. And our first person is Samantha Alloway.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. And hi, everybody. It's so good to see you all. Well, the ones I can see, but I know who's on the attendance list. So, hi, good to see you all. So, our objectives here, for the Arc of Illinois, I'd like to introduce who we are. So, we are the state's largest grassroots advocacy for intellectual and developmental disabilities. And if I was to explain what we do in one word, it would be advocate. And the way that we advocate here is to make sure that our directors, myself, our entire staff, is in touch and truly understands the needs of all the impacts of IDD in the state. So whether that be, I'm sure you've seen our largest advocacies in the last year, Medicaid and Medicare and proper payments to families, more flexibility in our waiver and more accessibility to that waiver protecting home and community-based services, because while I'll have the mic, I will say, remembering that it's still optional. And we want to see a world where that is just the norm and things are truly person-centered and families are able to develop homes and living situations for their children and loved ones where they can be included in the decisions, and making sure that self-advocates are consistently a part of these conversations and not just an oversight or something we talk about when it's all said and done. So building the house together is what we get from a lot of families, is we want to be a part of the process. And that is really what this grant is going to allow the Arc of Illinois to do, to be a true part of the process. So we are doing a statewide listening and data collection tour. We're going everywhere, baby. We right now have 27 different sites and listening sessions set up. And if you're on this call and you're thinking, hey, I'd love to have that within my community, please reach out. Samantha at thearcofil.org. Everybody can find my email. Please reach out and say, we want our families included in this survey and we want our voices to be heard. Our first one is going to be in Springfield. So if you're going to be at the Illinois Transition Conference on October 30th at 4:30, please stick around. We even have some catering. We got some Panera coming in. Okay. So if you want some cookies and coffee, I got just the place for you. And we're going to keep these launched, the statewide policy and true lived experience summit. We work with some outstanding partners. We work very closely with the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities, with the Department of Developmental Disabilities. We consider these folks our partners. So we're working together to make sure that this is truly accessible. We're going to look at the data analysis with our outstanding partners at UIC. Caitlin Crabb and her team are going to make sure that all of the data we collect is processed in a truly, Caitlin, help me out. What is the best way? How are we going to take and tell this story of our data?
Hi, this is Caitlin. I think sharing people's stories and supporting people to speak up. If you're looking for the more, are you looking for like a qualitative approach?
I sure am. Yeah, you say that way better than I do, Caitlin.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're going to make sure that we're working with partners who, at all times, I think you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You bring in the leaders that can help you create this story, this narrative, and then actually let's move. Let's not just talk. Let's not just listen. Let's move. We're going to look at waiver access with some outstanding partners. Some, I believe, are even here on the call with Engage Illinois and with Shirley Sains and her team, and learn about the unmet needs of families and how do we actually create access and navigate this system from the beginning all the way through. And you can go to the next slide. So there's a lot. I won't repeat all this, but this is our hope for outcomes. Like I said, we want to create impact. We want to create change. We want to move forward. So if we have this user-informed report detailing the unmet needs for individuals with IDD and their families, and the breakdowns by the age, the geography, the living situation. And I think it's really important to note just a few of the communities that we're going to be talking in. So we're going to Springfield, we're going to Bloomington, we're going to Centralia to work and speak to the Murray's Parents Association. Like I said, we're going to talk to everybody. We're going out to South Holland. We're going to the Vodka East Public Library, and then we're heading down south. I'm actually doing a Southern Illinois tour, which I can hardly wait for. And I'm going to Pinckneyville, Anna, DuQuoin, working with the mayor in Pulaski County, and all as deep south as Centralia. And we're working that, I'm up here in McHenry County and also in Winnebago County, but we're working the entire state to make sure that everybody's voices are heard. So we started with 8 regional events was our intention. And already as of today, we have 25, because at the Arc of Illinois, we have a lot of outreach and a lot of families have responded. So again, if you want to participate, please let us know. We will also be doing some virtual sessions to make sure as many people as possible have an opportunity to share. We will have one large summit that's going to bring us together. We're looking at the February range. And I apologize, you do not have the date and I do not have that solid yet. But the moment we do, we will have that accessible for everybody that can be in attendance to be in attendance. We're going to work at the waiver access, the recommendation reports, and we're going to deliver these, like I said, to our partners so that we're working together, and not to mention working side by side with the General Assembly and the governor's office. We've made everybody aware that we're doing this because our hopes are not to overtake, it is to facilitate change in the state and in our system. And this is going to lay the foundation for launching another year two targeted at genuine reform, pilot programs, and legislative asks based on the community-defined priorities. And that comes from you. That comes from the family voices. I think next slide. These are our deliverables. This is what we're going to work on with our partners. So the community data collection tool. And when I say data, we know and we hear often there are lots of forms of data, but how can we make that data accessible? And how can we take that data and create policy change from it? And when I think about IDD, it's often like these many individuals have been diagnosed with intellectual or developmental disabilities, but the impact is always more profound because the families are centered around this person. And I don't believe we'd have it any other way. But the truth is that impact takes a toll and a change on all families. We have to look at the unmet needs statewide report with region-specific snapshots. And when I say not just region, we have to talk about the reality of making sure we include people of color, people that feel marginalized within their own communities, making sure that everybody has an opportunity to tell us what's going on in their lives. We're going to create a public data dashboard so that it's accessible for families to look at and say, hey, this is something relatable. And also at the Arc of Illinois, we always believe when you give families an opportunity to come together, you'd be amazed at how communities and networks and neighbors help each other. And this is an opportunity for us to have a closer community throughout the state. We're going to do our advocacy, as we always will, the awareness infographic to make it easy and accessible for families and self-advocates to speak for themselves. And we're going to have these recorded webinars for use by any coalition member, providers, families, for you to have the opportunity to share as well.
All right. Thank you, Samantha.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Our next person is Mike Bibo for the Center for Development and Disabilities Advocacy and the Community Supports. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Doug, and welcome everybody. Thank you for participating today. I got to be honest, it's hard to keep up the enthusiasm that Samantha just showed and keep up that kind of energy. So I won't. I know regulations well, and I'm about as dry as those are. So that's how it's going to go. The Center for Development of Disabilities Advocacy and Community Supports is a statewide association representing residential programs for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. That's including SILAs, the ICFTDs, and the MCDDs. The MCDDs, if you're not aware, used to be called SNF Pediatrics, long-term care under age 22. They've had several different names, but a few years back, they changed their names legally to MCDD, standing for Medical Complex for the Developmentally Disabled. And the center represents those three types of facilities, as I said. Statewide. We're proud to be a partner with everyone else here in what we're doing, and we have objectives. You know, we want to complete the in-person surveys. We've been working with Samantha and with Caitlin and stuff on developing some surveys. We want to work on that. We want to be able to provide all the families and try to develop a method so that people can access where locations are. Right now, there's too much of a divide in that. You can look up where ICFTDs and MCDs are, but no one knows where SILAs are. And we think that there needs to be more transparency so that when families are wanting to find some place for their son or daughter or family member or loved one, they can try to help find out, not just from the network facilitators and from the formerly network facilitators and the ISCs, but actually find a website that we can make available to them so they can locate services that may be near their locale. So we're working with them on that. We want to try to stop some of the pigeonholing that's been going on. That's ICFDD versus SCILA, and one's bad, one's better. We believe in choice. And Olmsted, which started this whole thing years ago, was a determination that people should live in the least restrictive environment that they can. That is appropriate, that they choose. And all three of those components should be considered in making placements out there. Very much supporting all the programs, but letting people know that the programs do exist. We're going to launch a statewide awareness campaign. We've been working on the survey stuff. Excuse me. So we're working on that. And then we're going to come up with the deliverables for the living options guide. We want to have a portal, as I said, where you can get access on the website. You have counseling toolkits. So we're just trying to work this together, pull this together with everybody, and make things as available to families and loved ones who's trying to seek placement as possible. One of the other things we want to do is work on the regulations. Right now, 5,000 people are regulated by public health under the ICFDDs and the MCDDs. In 2010, when the center pulled the ICFDDs and MCDDs out from under the Nursing Home Care Act, our intent was to move it all over to DHS. It doesn't make sense that we have a division of developmental disabilities, at least in our opinion, that we have a division of developmental disabilities, and yet the 5,000 people being served in those or in ICFDs and MCDDs aren't under the division of developmental disabilities. So those are some of the things we want to do away with. And again, as I mentioned, sort of eliminate some of the pigeonholing that's going on. So been a pleasure to be working with Josh and Samantha and Kathy and Caitlin and Doug as our project manager to continue to pull this thing together and fill in as we want. Much of us cross over, so in issues, so there's no sense going over all the stuff Samantha just went over with, because believe me, if I had that much energy, I'd sleep for the next week. So
Come on, Mike. You got a lot of energy. Don't be ridiculous.
anyway.
Okay, thank you, Mike. The next person is Josh Evans, speaking for the Illinois Association of Rehabilitation Facilities. Josh, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Josh Evans, as indicated, with IARF, the Association of Rehabilitation Facilities. We represent non-for-profit developmental disability and behavioral health service providers across the state of Illinois. Similar in many respects to the ARC, our primary reason for being is advocacy to state and federal governments on rules, regulations, policies, and resources. Our goal being to help facilitate the best of all possible services that our members can provide to children and family in Illinois. As is mentioned, it's an honor to have been up to date, to be a part of this coalition effort with my colleagues in statewide organizations with largely shared goals towards further advancing person-centered services and supports in the state of Illinois. With respect to the objectives that have been outlined for the association for this year one and part of year two, we're focused on data vision and strategy. Our number one goal for the time remaining in the year one of the grant is to support a person-centered lifespan, a lifespan inclusive system. The coalition must first understand the full population of individuals with IDD in Illinois, which requires a comprehensive partnership-driven data strategy to unify fragmented data, prioritize equity, and build trust among agencies and stakeholders. To sort of summarize that, we know that there are multiple state agencies with different data points on children and youth in service and out of service in the education system, in the DCFS system, and then as they come over to the adult system over at DHS. And a goal has been stated by this coalition is how can we thread those data sources together so that it's understandable, so that we can analyze that data and help determine sort of what our trajectories are in the state of Illinois. As part of our effort, we have a work group here internally to the association of what I affectionately have called data nerds that understand big D and little d data and how to manage it. And our goal is to have a data strategy document that defines what data is needed, how it will be collected and used, and how partnerships will be cultivated and sustained. We've outlined a series of performance indicators and deliverables as well. Some of those indicators are engaged stakeholders, such as this conversation today, but also with our coalition partners, namely engaging and talking about this activity with various state agencies, service coordination, case management agencies, and school districts towards a formalized data vision and strategy document, and to develop some governance and ethical data protocols. The number two priority, I guess I would say, that we're working towards is to build a partnership for the data sharing beyond just this list of organizations that are part of the group today. That will involve a great deal of work, which is mostly, I would say, considerably outside of my expertise as a guy that's an advocacy background. But we're going to be working with external stakeholder partners, ideally, that can help manage and make sense of both big D and little d data. What we're going to be looking at in terms of key performance indicators are the number of organizations contributing data, the frequency of quality and partner communication and engagement, and stakeholder satisfaction, coordination, and collaboration. I think ideally where we would like to end up by the end of this grant year one is some sort of a pilot for melding together this big D and little d data into something that can be sensible and actionable. Now, one of the things that frequently occupies my mind as our work group is meeting on this is to the extent this is a big audacious goal, because every organization needs to have those big audacious goals, which is the ability to thread desperate data across different systems, get them talking to each other, making sure it's understandable. Again, as mentioned, it's no surprise that I think our state agencies within the technology they have try to do the best they can. But I think our big audacious goal here is to try to get that data in one place so that in years two, hopefully, if we're successful, in years three, and hopefully we're successful of this grant, we can take action on the data that we're gathering so that we have an understanding of the lifespan, wants and needs of individuals in the state of Illinois, to position us to ensure services can evolve to meet changing needs. As many of you know, much better than I, expectations for our loved ones have changed dramatically in the decades that many of us have been involved in services and supports. And it's appropriate that we have data that can inform policy decision-making in the future. To sort of put a pin a bit on this, one of the things that I wanted to mention that I think is important is why we are working towards this data infrastructure and data warehouse. We are aware that the Division of DD is undergoing its own strategic development process in parallel, and we're certainly excited that I believe they're present on this webinar as well today, but working with the division and their efforts as well. I think the timing is excellent for this kind of work. Our work group is going to be continuing to meet. We're, as a group, going to be having a data summit later this month on the 23rd at the Bloomington Airport. Since been advised we're not actually flying anywhere tropical. We're actually just going to be having the meeting in the airport. But again, what we hope for is a prototype for a secure, scalable data warehouse system capable of ingesting, storing, and analyzing millions of records across agencies and organizations. Certainly a big, audacious goal, certainly something that we have to think about in terms of scalability. But with any major system redesign effort like this, I think it's appropriate that we have these kinds of goals as we plan for the future.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Our next member to speak will be Kathy Carmody from the Institute on Public Policy for People with Disabilities. Welcome,
Thanks.
Kathy.
Thanks, Doug. Sorry for the late sign on. Glad to be with everybody today, including our partners. I'm going to Well, just a little bit of background. The Institute is a statewide association of organizations that provide direct services and supports to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities across Illinois. Our member organizations provide services to over 35,000 people receiving, or 35,000 people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And again, happy to be a partner with my colleagues in this effort. I'm going to talk about three what I'll call buckets, because there are some distinct activities, but the common thread throughout them is looking at some near-term impact to expand service and support availability to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the state. So the first program model that we're working on is the Certified Transition Program Incubator, and we're seeking to expand opportunities for post-transition age young adults with IDD. You've got some detail on the program in front of you. Essentially, what I would say is this is a bit of a behind-the-scenes activity taking place. Our primary target is colleges across Illinois that either have or are interested in developing a certified transition program, and that would then be available to young adults leaving school settings and interested in being able to access education and services through a college structure. A couple of things about the CTP program for those of you who might be listening and who aren't terribly familiar with it. And probably because, again, we're seeking to expand it because we think it shows a lot of potential for a segment of the IDD population. The Certified Transition Program is FAFSA eligible, meaning that if it is part of approved as part of pre-employment training services through DRS, then it can be paid for through that program. According to my colleague, Rebecca Clark, who has the data on it, 70% of students who matriculate through the program get a community integrated employment outcome job and retain that job for at least a year, which is some pretty dramatic success standards. So we think there's a lot of opportunity in the system for expansion of this model, and that's what our work in this space is focused on. If you want to go to the next slide, Doug, I'll talk a little bit about the deliverables. And our model for deliverables is fairly consistent across the three efforts. But again, we're looking to expand the model, expand awareness about the model, definitely for young adults and families who may see that as an opportunity for their family member. Again, doesn't require somebody be enrolled in the waiver. It's really their entree is through the Department of Rehab Services. And we are seeking then to create some materials that will be available. We'll certainly rely on our partners here and the ARC of Illinois to get the word out to families who probably want to know more about it through some material dissemination, and then also the recording of a webinar that will live in posterity for people to kind of on demand be able to learn more about the program and the model. We can go to the next slide, Doug, please. Oh, I'm sorry. You went ahead. Sorry, go back to objective 2. Sorry, my bad.
Okay.
Objective 2 is working in the dignity and pay space, which is probably a term familiar to a lot of people on this webinar, and really looking to create a bridge between the community, providers, and families to state policymakers who are focused in this area, and make sure that there's information exchange and flow in both directions. So that people who are intended to benefit from the dignity and pay legislation understand it. They understand what opportunities it presents to them, and they know how to take advantage of those, but also that state policymakers have the information and insight from people directly affected by this legislation to make sure that it remains sensitive and reacts to what people are saying that they're looking for. So again, some hard copy deliverables and some materials that will live on in the universe so that people who come after us will benefit from the work that is taking place through this project today. And thirdly, Doug, hopefully behavioral health clinics is a program model that is increasingly something that people are aware of as an opportunity, both for people seeking services and for agencies looking to expand their service lines. So we are seeking to help expand the behavioral health clinic footprint across the state. And briefly, the model is Medicaid funded, does not require anybody to be enrolled in the waiver. It does require, in this particular case, and to be clear, the behavioral health clinic extends beyond people with IDD, but in our particular circumstances, we were talking about people who have both a diagnosis that qualifies as an IDD as well as a mental health condition. And that makes them eligible for behavioral health clinic services, which we are seeking to and have very successfully, I would say, been expanding across the state for people with IDD. So we hear a lot about the lack of mental health services and behavioral health support services for people with IDD that are sensitive to the unique needs of our population. This model addresses that challenge and embeds those services within a qualified IDD community organization who creates some additional services, resources, and expertise to be able to address both IDD and mental health behavioral health support needs of people. Thanks to the division who is on. I know you just put in your most recent communication. We've got the first of 3 training sessions coming up in 2 weeks. I don't know if we have any availability left in that session, but that should be in your most recent DD communication. And then we will be doing 2 additional training sessions in Central and Southern Illinois. And again, creating resources and materials. I would say most importantly for families to know that this resource exists. I suspect that families who aren't connected to an IDD organization may not be aware that in their very communities may exist this resource that, again, as long as somebody has Medicaid and meets the behavioral health, mental health, and IDD diagnosis, doesn't need approval from anybody to be able to access. So we really want to make sure that we spread the word both to families whose family members would be direct beneficiaries, and to community agencies. Many of you who are a part of today's webinar, I know, have either successfully developed a behavioral health clinic or are in process of exploring that as an additional service line opportunity. So I would say that our work is looking to kind of have some near-term system expansion that we think will benefit people where they are today. And then we also are seeking to assure that we kind of braid or thread those expansions into the kind of the fabric of the system so that people in the future are able to benefit as well. That's my update, Doug. Thanks for the opportunity to expand upon it.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Our next and final member to present will be Caitlin Crabb from the UIC Institute on Disability and Human Development. Caitlin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Crabb. Like Doug said, I'm from UIC's Institute on Disability and Human Development. I just want to take a brief moment to talk about our center because I don't think a lot of people know about it. And sorry if you've already heard about this, but I want to make sure that people know that we're a resource. So we are the University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, or the UCED for the state of Illinois. So we receive federal funding through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, along with 67 other university centers across the U.S. There's at least one in every state. We were established by the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act, along with protection and advocacy systems and developmental disability councils. So these 3 entities form what is called the Developmental Disability Network in each state. So in Illinois, it's us as the University Center, Equip for Equality, which is the protection and advocacy system, and the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities. So our centers, the university centers, train future professionals, They provide training and technical assistance for community services. Of course, we conduct research, being at a university, and then we disseminate information related to these activities. So we work with the state. I recognize many names on this call today on evaluations and research and resources to improve supports for people with developmental disabilities in Illinois. So that's just a little bit of background about our center. So now I'll talk about what we hope to accomplish in this effort. And Samantha had talked about several of these things already, so I'll just elaborate a little. Our first objective is to support data collection and analysis. So we want to get a better understanding of the needs of families and people with developmental disabilities in Illinois. We're supporting the ARC with a survey tool. The development of a survey tool in focus group and individual interviews. And then we'll complete analysis of the data that we've collected, and that will be compiled into a report. You can go to the next slide, Doug. Our second objective is planning for development of a data dashboard. So we really want people in Illinois to have greater access to national data, including data that is collected on Illinois, so that people can get an understanding of how Illinois is doing compared to other states in different areas, and compared to the US as a whole, because we think it's a really important tool for people to use data to be able to advocate. So we're planning for it because I've never built a data dashboard. So it's really planning, what are the costs, what are the requirements for data procurement, feasibility, startup, and ongoing support needed. And then I guess I'll just note a few of the data sets we're hoping to have data on the dashboard to be like the National Core Indicators, the Residential Information Systems Project, which is out of the University of Minnesota University Center, ThinkWork, State of the States, Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, UCP Case for Inclusion. So these national data sets that include Illinois as well. Then Doug, you go to the next slide. And then our last objective is waiver research on best practices with a focus on case management for people with developmental disabilities. We want to get a better understanding of what the emerging and best practices are in the home and community-based services Medicaid waivers as it relates to flexibility in providing services, and also what are the current case management practices in the waivers for people with developmental disabilities. So the deliverable for this will be a report detailing our findings related to flexibility and the case management practices. And I think that's it for me.
That's it. So we thank you all very much for presenting your portions of the work and what your plans are. We do have time for some questions, and I've been looking through and trying to answer some of what people have been submitting. I think one of the things that we have a lot of interest in is how are we going to ensure that people with disabilities and their families are being heard, that they have an opportunity to participate, that this isn't going to be provider driven. This is going to be driven by the people who actually need the services and want to guide their own lives. So I'll turn this over to you guys for an answer. What do you think? How would you respond to that?
I think I can respond to that. The ARC is not a provider, and we're the one who is, we have curated this survey with our team. And it's because we have a really unique opportunity at the ARC of Illinois that all of our directors are parents of children with disabilities. So our community outreach, when we talk about the places we're going, is because of our community partners and not necessarily because of providers. We work with providers and we partner with them, but this is real community driven, family groups, community groups, libraries, where we may work with the providers to have the families come out to these events, but we're not necessarily working with them directly, so it's their voices. So another very open again. While we've been on this call, I've actually gotten 3 emails from people on this webinar saying, come here and talk here. So we will. So these opportunities too, for us to be a public entity, and for you to know that we are available to listen to your communities and your voices. And once again, we will be having virtual listening sessions as well that will be statewide. So you and your family can attend, and you can bring people that maybe don't even know we're here, and make sure that your voices are heard. We will make sure there are ample opportunities in the next 6 months for you to do just that.
Yeah, and this is Caitlin from UIC, and I think that's a really great and important question. And it's something, I will say that our university center and our department is almost entirely people with disabilities, including developmental disabilities, including people receiving services. Not everyone, but a lot. So we have that representation. We have a consumer advisory committee. Don't love the name, but that's what they're called. That includes families, includes people with disabilities. But I think we're still trying to continue to be more and more intentional about how people who self-advocates are involved, especially in research, and sometimes they're university, and I think just the university system makes that really difficult because people with self-advocates are seen as vulnerable populations, right? So that makes it so hard to go through these bureaucratic processes, and to pay people too. So it's something that we continue to think about how to do inclusive research with self-advocates leading. But it's a really great question. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay.
What I would add, and those were very good. First of all, thanks to everybody that put those questions forward. And because I believe, at least over the course of the several years and meetings we've been a part of, that's been a reoccurring item for each of our discussions, which is ensuring that the work that gets done here is being driven with person-centered services and supports and input by design. I want to go back to something I think Doug led off with, which is what we're hoping to accomplish with this first year. And this first year is about learning, gathering data, getting information, less about attempting to make any trajectory decisions about the future and services and supports. And speaking for my association and our engagement, I don't foresee a situation where when we get data, we look at that data where there are decisions potentially made about, at least with respect to recommendations on policy, that those decisions would be made in isolation, made exclusively by this group, without input from individuals and families. I don't see a future where that would occur, if you take my meaning. And just wanted to make sure that was put out there as well. I think there was a question about the council. The council was involved in a lot of our early conversations when we were pulling this coalition together. I just think because there's sort of a quasi-governmental, non-governmental group, that there may be some, I don't want to say conflicts is a strong word, I guess, but some potential issues about them signing on to receive the grant application. But it's my understanding conversations continue with the council now, and there's every intention to continue to work with not just the Council on DD, but also the Division of Developmental Disabilities within DHS as well.
Yeah, and I think too that what we've talked about from the very beginning with this whole coalition idea is building partnerships, of getting away from the dictatorial, okay, this is what you've got to have, this is what you're offered, to get away from that and instead to build partnerships with individuals, to build partnerships with families, to build partnerships with the state, and to create a way for everybody to work together that's being driven by what the person needs. And that has been a focus of our conversation almost from the very beginning, is how do we do this so that people have a voice, so that it's not being told what they're going to get, but being able to say and receive, this is what I want, this is what I need. And that's really what we're all about. And as we move along, as Josh said, as I said it earlier on, as we move out of this information gathering portion of the grant and moving into what can we, what kind of changes need to be made, what's going to be offered, how are we going to look at things. That all depends upon what we find out during this first year as we're talking to people and finding out what they struggle with, what they need, what they want. I know we had one question about, folks that once they leave the school system and are waiting for other services, that oftentimes there's nothing out there. That's been something that may have been one of the earliest questions that we had is how do you deal with that gap? What can be done so that somebody doesn't leave the school program and think, oh, I've got 4 or 5 or 6 years now where nothing's going to happen. And we know that that's such a critical time. And people lose skills if they don't use skills. And to sit there and wait for 4 or 5 years is a tragedy. And so we want to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen and that we can move things forward.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything they want to add about? Okay. I'm looking through people's questions here.
Doug, if the chat's there, can you put my email in the chat? I got
I
3
can do
more.
that.
And someone said, I'm not sure if I got your email right. You did, Cindy. You did get my email right. I'll respond later, but it's Samantha@thearcofil.org.
Make sure my spelling is right. All right.
Oh, I'm so
Doug,
sorry. I didn't see it.
that just went to the host and panelists. I don't know if that went to everyone.
Oh, let me change that.
And somebody's asking for everyone's email. Please put or if you can make the chat so everyone can see it, I can put my email too.
Okay, you should just be able to click on chat down below and it should open it up.
No, it doesn't.
I will also add that in the original invitation, there was an email address, info@disabilitypartnersil.org. Anything you send there will come to me and I can share with everybody else what we've got, and try to answer any questions. And then once the website goes live, we will have a place where questions can be asked directly, where information can be stored and shared with everybody who's interested.
Yep.
Oh.
Somebody asked if the recording is being shared. Did you talk
Yes,
about that earlier?
Again, as soon as the website goes live, the recording of this webinar will be shared on the website so that people can watch it or download it. And I'm not sure why the chat isn't working.
I think it's disabled for everyone except for you. But there are some other questions that we haven't answered. Should we?
Okay, jump right in.
I don't know if I'm the best one to answer all of these, but
Okay.
but I can read some of the ones I don't think that have been answered. Oh, will the examination also include an assessment of the crisis system? So like SST, SSH, respite, etc.
So can I jump in real fast, Caitlin?
Sure.
So one of the things, and this just occurred to me, because again, after several months of meetings about these topics, is to what element did we work into this application and expectations, things that we think we know we need to fix and how we think we know we need to fix them. Fix being an interesting word, I guess, to use there. So taking a step back from that is there are a number of issues, rightly so, that are raised with some of these Q&A about, serving individuals with severe and profound developmental disabilities, folks with co-occurring conditions and needs, For example, individuals aging out, how we seem to cyclically hit this situation where individuals aging out of children and youth care into the adult care there, where we get backlogged. At least my viewpoint is avoiding making too many assumptions about what we think is needed and how we think it needs to be addressed, and instead rely on the data that we're going to gather from all these events that the ARC and the Institute, that the ARC and Caitlin's group, UIC, is going to be organizing over the next several weeks and months. Having been at this for 20 years, I think there's some things that I believe, based on input from my members and others, how it should be addressed, but that could represent provider bias, has been, raised earlier. And so I think part of this effort is taking a step back to really get a clean look at what the thousands of individuals and families are telling us, so that we've got a good contemporary data set to move from. So that's sort of my partial response to some of the questions about, well, what are we going to be doing about this issue? What are we going to be doing about that issue? I think that's a bit downstream in terms of when we get the data, when that data is discussed with state agencies that have jurisdiction over services and fund services. I think that's a bit downstream. So I wouldn't want to be too presumptuous when I say, what are we doing about the number of individuals that are aging out of the DCFS system, for example?
And I just want to go ahead, Kathy, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to, jumping off from that topic, Josh, I just want to, I think we know it and assure people this is not the only thing that any of us are focused on. And so that topic in particular, several of us are involved with providers who deliver those services, who this is like issue number one for them. So I just want to underscore that, I don't want anyone to think, hey, this is the only thing happening in the system right now.
Right.
Some of the other very clear threats to our system, I think, are things that all of us are burning the midnight oil on, so to speak. Part of our effort with Coleman was to be able to demonstrate some forward movement so that they can see the value of this model, and they can see the value in continuing, to partner with us beyond a year one application. So just wanted to add that, Josh, to your comments. Thanks.
Okay, well, before we wrap up, I do want to offer my apology. I thought that the chat was working. I don't know why it's not, because we intended this to be a two-way conversation and to hear the input of folks, so I'm not sure what went wrong there. So that's on our end. It wasn't our intent, my intent to keep anybody from chatting or anything like that, so I do apologize for that. We're getting very close to the end here, so I want to thank everybody for attending, for listening to what we have to say. Again, if you have specific questions that you want to put forth, the email address for information about the coalition is info@disabilitypartnersil.org. info@disabilitypartnersil.org. And when I send out the slide deck and other information to all the people that registered, I will include that additional information so that everybody has access to that. All right, well, thank you all again, and I look forward to working with everybody and developing partnerships. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.